5 years that I've been covering this, nothing has topped the 2 games I've seen tonight.
Just what the doctor ordered.
The Argyle Pipers, favorite, leading 48-47.
They'll be going to the ball line.
It's such a emotional situation. Well, we gotta thank people like Paul Purcell.
Best teams represented here, and it boils down to the top 2 are from the same zone, the same 2 teams that have been battling it out all season. One ranked number 1, one ranked number 7. And if it matches anything what we just saw in our consolation final, don't go away, because we got a super night of basketball coming up. And it's a madhouse already.
It's a foul, and it's a foul on Mills of Argyle. Each team has a foul now. It's 4-4. Now he can put the Highlanders in a lead, which would force the Pipers to score.
He sunk the Longshot. Where? We don't know. One's going to be a celebration. The other one, I'm sure, is going to be awake.
And both teams have reason to celebrate. There's no loser when it gets down to this. Okay, here's Paul Kitchener trying to tie it up there with 13 seconds to go.
Brian was a wonderful person. He was very easygoing most of the time. He was very easygoing, and the students loved him. Not just the basketball students, but just about all the students at West Van High School have stories to tell about Brian.
Well, he was a basketball player, teacher, and a great longtime friend.
He was a great father, a PE teacher at West Van High, so he had summers off, spent lots of time with the family and with us and all the kids as well.
He could get his point across if he was, if he wanted to emphasize something or he was a little bit perturbed, you could tell, but there was never any outbursts from him. Brian always had huge respect from all his teams that he coached, and I remember when I first started teaching, and one of the players, Hank Brigman, was, I used to go to the Avalon pub with my friends, and we were in there one night in the summertime, and I saw Hank Brigman in there, and Hank was going into grade 12. And so he saw me, and he came over and says, "Oh, please don't tell Mr. Upson that I'm in here." And I'll never forget that.
Brian was a great guy, great coach, great mentor for us as young men growing up.
Brian and I rented a penthouse apartment in the West End of Vancouver. So we had this apartment, we had this large circle of friends, and we would throw a party periodically. And it quickly became known as the falling off the roof party, because it was a small apartment and we'd have over 50 or 60 people in this one bedroom apartment with a patio out on the roof. Woke up one morning, there were half a dozen chickens in our apartment making a racket. I couldn't figure out. I woke up, I couldn't believe the sound. And another one, this friend of ours, we had a third member came and stayed with us for a while, and they made a bet. He said, "You can't get up 5 mornings in a row and get to work in plenty of time." And he said, "Well, I'll make you a bet." So they made a bet. Brian always got up in the morning and said, get up, you're going to miss the best part of the day. And so every morning he got up, go to work. He'd get in at 2 in the morning, get up at 5 or 6 in the morning and go to work. We couldn't believe it. And only when he collected his bet, which I think at that stage was a case of beer, he found that the guy was going down and renting a cheap room and going to sleep for another 3 or 4 hours to win the bet. So that was one of the silly stories we got involved in.
I know we always went away on holidays with the 3 boys, the 3 sons that we had.
We would get together with my dad would hang out with all the other basketball coaches and PE teachers and the families. So we used to have a big gathering. There was about 15 families or so that we would all get together and go up to the Okanagan and camp up at one of the lakes up there.
Probably the thing I remember most, he was a phenomenal overall athlete. Probably the best story was he played tennis, and we would come over and I'd play him a game of tennis, and he'd get so fed up with me because I wasn't very good that he finally said in one game, he said, "I'm going to play you left-handed." And I was absolutely humiliated. I think I only got a couple of points and he was playing me left-handed. But basketball was his prime sport, the one that he reached his peak of his talent and skill.
My dad loved basketball. I mean, basketball that was it for my dad. He loved it. So from the moment the basketball season began until the BC championships were done, he was all in and completely focused on spending his time in basketball in the high school.
We went to UBC together and played on the UBC Thunderbirds for a number of years. Brian ended up as captain of the UBC team, and then we went on later to the Senior Men's League in Vancouver, which was big. There was no professional basketball here. There's no professional hockey team at those years. And we used to go have a gym where we'd get 500 to 1,000 people out on a Friday and Saturday night to watch senior men's amateur basketball. And that was a very successful one. In a subsequent year, 1 or 2 years later, Brian became a member of the Iders basketball team, senior men's team, and they won the Canadian Championship, and he went to Chile to the World Championships. So he thought he had a long and successful basketball career.
Tom Rippon, who became the coach in 79-80, asked Brian to come out and coach during the playoffs, to help coach during the playoffs, just to keep him involved. And I guess that led to the following year, Tom asking Brian to come out for the whole season, which he did.
I learned a lot for my own coaching watching Brian's practices. There was a lot of fitness drills and stuff like that early on in the practice. And then there was strategy on breaking presses and running our zone offense and our man-to-man offense. Brian was very much on principles rather than a pattern offense.
And he really coached to what our skills were. So we weren't a tall team. You know, at 6'4", I was as tall as anybody on the team. And so we played... we had to play a fast game, so we had to be quicker than the other team, and so we worked a lot of that, a lot of drills on running.
I really wanted to go to West Vancouver High because of the way Brian coached. He was a tough taskmaster, and he had great expectations of everyone. He never let anyone do less than their best, and I think I needed someone like that to push the best out of me.
He came to every practice, almost every practice, and games, and he would be brought in, he would sit on the stage, and really Tom Rippon ran most of our practices physically. But Brian was kind of like the mentor, the sage, sitting back and providing us insight and advice. Gandalf to the team, who sat back with his advice and years of experience.
Brian Upson provided the confidence and the experience and the knowledge to give our team the belief that we could win a championship.
Yeah, Mr. Upson taught me about the importance of confidence and having confidence in my abilities, and he always emphasized the must-take shot. In other words, if we had a shot, if we were open on the court and we were in a place we were comfortable in a high-pressure situation, to go ahead and rely on our abilities and go ahead and take that shot, and odds are that it will go in.
He was a phenomenal coach. Not just a phenomenal coach, but a phenomenal human being in that he knew how to relate to his players in a way that other people couldn't. He got the best out of all of us. That was the best thing about him, you know?
We were quick. We were a team that fast broke, got down the floor before the other team could. We could handle the ball, and we could play great defense, both zone and man-to-man.
But Argyle, I can't say what happened with them, but they actually went from a good team to a great team. And those players who we played against all through high school that we'd beaten over the years had really improved.
I think it was another situation where we didn't play to our abilities. The second half of the season was very much like that. As I said, we started the season ranked number 1, and I think we weren't really clicking.
I think going into that season, we might have had a reputation of being a bit soft. I think we weren't the toughest team, we weren't the strongest team. And when you think of what Argyle's reputation was, they had some real scrappy guys like Tim Mills and Ken Wright and Steve Paulette, who always fought for every loose ball and were known for getting dirty and getting bruised every game. And then you had Mark Martyr, who behind the team sat there at 6'8", with the ability to block a lot of shots that came his way.
We were a good bunch of guys. We played together from 9 through 12, so we knew each other very well. We weren't all the best of friends, but we all got along in the basketball court very well. Very similar to West Van. West Van stayed with the same guys pretty much throughout. Eric Lockhart played a little bit above. He played senior when he was in grade 10, and Eric Tremansic played senior when he was in grade 10 as well. So, I mean, we played against the same guys, so we had a lot of respect for each other. We knew each other very well.
There was a great rivalry for years in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s between North Vancouver and West Vancouver.
So these were two great teams that would have to battle it out on the North Shore. And I think both teams had great respect for each other.
They were a tremendously competitive, hard-working team, and they demonstrated that on the court and off the court.
The first time we played Argyle, I think the score would have been 54-50 or something of that nature. So it was probably a game pretty similar to that final game.
Well, they were the biggest rivals for us on the North Shore, definitely. And I think all through grade 8, 9, 10, and 11, we beat them. We thought we had a better team. Grade 12, that turned over pretty quickly. We played them 3 times and prior to the tournament, and we lost each game.
Argyle was really the toughest, most competitive team that we came across all season. Having the chance to play them 3 times in a year and having them beat us so soundly prior to the championship game, they were definitely an amazing basketball team.
But I know Brian told them a story, the same thing that he told the reporter in the pregame meeting. He says the more times you play a team, the better your chances are to beat them.
played golf together a lot, and for about a year and a half, he was diagnosed with an ulcer, and we'd be out golfing, and he'd say, "Oh, my stomach hurts," but for a year and a half, we thought it was an ulcer, and we didn't pay a lot of attention because ulcers are treatable.
I think all of us knew that that he was sick in some way, and then when he told us, I think it was surreal for all of us.
I think, you know, you see changes in somebody, right? You know, the physical changes that take place. You could see, you know, he wasn't a guy who displayed his pain, but you could see that he was in pain.
At the time, I would say I just wasn't as aware of what it meant and what effect it would have on us as a family.
He had colon cancer, so it was probably very hard to detect because he did have an ulcer, which often cancer will camouflage.
Over time, you could see Brian's health failing, but you know what always impressed me about Brian is that he didn't take time off. I mean, every once in a while he wouldn't be around because he was getting some treatments, but he always came back and he always came to practices and games and was always positive and constructive. And you know, he didn't change with us when he was healthy versus when he actually had his cancer.
He was saddened and devastated by it, but he went on. He had a spirit and a courage that was very, very strong.
When it came down to 1979, and Brian had cancer, he wasn't able to continue teaching. And so he was out of basketball for the first time in, I guess, almost his entire life at that point.
Well, they were very upset because everybody in the school loved Brian. I mean, it wasn't just the basketball team or anything like that. It was the whole school. So everybody was devastated when they found out.
Brian's had announced that he would be stepping down as head coach and that Coach Rippon would assume head coach responsibilities.
When I invited him to come back for the 82 year, he said he would do it, and we started out, and then his doctor phoned me at home.
The doctors told him that, you know, what he was doing for Brian was fantastic, getting him involved, keeping him involved, but the chances of him living to Christmas was not likely.
He'd put so much time into coaching and to the kids over the years that he had coached at high school. And for him, this was the ultimate achievement as well. And so I truly believe if it wasn't for basketball, I don't know if Brian would have lived as long as he did.
At one stage in the fall, when he was very ill, he said to me, "I'm so tired and I'm so slow. I just wish this was over." And from my knowledge at that stage, when people give up, they go fairly quickly.
He was diagnosed that he would not live till Christmas, but because of basketball, he pushed through, and that just definitely gave him the will to live.
What Brian had taught me during those last weeks of his life is that the strength of the human spirit, if you really want to do something, you can will yourself to achieve a lot of things, but he willed himself to live.
We had a job to do, and we knew that Brian was not well, and that we had to deliver.
And for us being so young at that time to experience competition in life and reality of life, I think all of us who were involved at that time, I think we grew up pretty fast.
I mean, obviously, when he found out about his cancer, extremely upset, as we all were. We were very positive and hoped that he would be able to fight it, but unfortunately, as time went on, we realized that wasn't going to happen.
for most years, the Househound only got one team to go into the BCs, but I'm not sure why. I can't remember why, but in this particular year, there was a backdoor opportunity for the second place Househound team to get into the BCs.
We had to go and play a team from the island, a team I never had heard before. And I fully expected to win. I mean, we thought we were a good team.
As it turned out, they were very good. And we knew nothing about them and so on. And it was very hard. I think we underestimated them. So we had no idea what their ability was, but they were very good.
They had an athlete on their team that man, I'd never seen play. He was a great player.
We knew that it was win or go home. At that point, I think that was when our team really started to gel, because we realized that if we don't win this game, this is going to be the end of our season.
We had lots of success over the years. So a team from the island we never heard of before, yeah, we actually almost lost that game and almost didn't make it to the finals.
We managed a very narrow 1-point victory with their last second shot from their own side of center almost going in.
And thankfully, we won the game and got in the tournament.
The BC High School Boys Basketball Tournament is set up over a 4-day period. I can't remember exactly how many teams show up, but it's represented from teams all across the province, and different areas of the province have representation, and based upon the success of those areas, you either have one team or you could have as many as 2, 3, 4 teams representing your area. And they played Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and if you're lucky enough to get to the final, you played Saturday night, so it was 4 games in a row.
Do you think that the kids are starting to get tired? No way. They're ready to play. 4 games in 4 nights doesn't hurt? No, they can play 5, 6. They're ready.
Brian normally came to the games during that season, and then he would sit on a cushion on a chair by the bench, and of course that's what he did during the BCs.
He always looked better when he came to the gym. I mean, he loved the gym, and you know, he was very frail. I mean, it was difficult to watch him being wheeled in a wheelchair, and he would get up very slowly, and he would have to sit.
Brian was skin and bone. His clothes didn't fit. You know, he was weak. He had very, very little weight left on him.
My memories are of a guy who looked very frail and very tired physically, but a guy who still had a smile and a twinkle in his eye and enough heart and energy to try to focus us in the right direction. And probably what I remember most is I'd been really nervous all tournament and hadn't played the way I should have. And he hauled me aside and really wanted to chat with me, just to remind me, do what I always did. Don't try to do any more and never do any less.
This is the P&E Agrodome in Vancouver, March 20th, 1982, the site of the BC AA High School Basketball Championships. Hello everyone, I'm Dan Russell with Gord Kernoff, and tonight it's our pleasure to bring you the final game in the championship series between the Argyle Pipers and the West Vancouver Highlanders, an all North Shore final, Gord Kernoff. That's right, the two Househound finalists.
The Agrodome was an old barn with, I think, seated about 5,000 people. You went into the changing rooms and it was really smelly.
They used the Agrodome during the P&E, I think it was for the cow show or the P&E or the horse show, and so there's a little bit of a smell in behind it that had some uniqueness to it, but yeah, played at the Agrodome, it was exciting. You know, we always played in high school gymnasiums, right? So we might have had 120, depending on who you were playing and what was going on and what time of night it was. So to be in the Agrodome, it was exciting. You know, it was a big stadium for us, 5,000 people.
The fans for the last game were absolutely crazy. We had the best fans you can imagine.
Yeah, Fans are great. The level of volume that they made, the noise they made, and the energy they brought to the game, they're the ones that made the game exciting for us. You know, and I remember looking into the crowds, and people were yelling and screaming, sometimes for us, sometimes against us, but the actual fans were phenomenal.
What you probably may not know is that you know, Brian, by the time we got to the provincials, was really too sick to get to the dressing room. And there was a long set of stairways up to where the changing rooms were, and the agrodome, of course, it's called an agrodome for a reason. There's stalls and for penning animals. And so we would have our team meetings before every game down in the stalls.
Before we played the final game, you know, unfortunately, I don't really remember what Tom had to say. I really just remember Brian trying to take the pressure off us. He really was proud of what we'd done and how we got there.
And I remember he gave a sort of analogy like swans on a pond, you know, where you're graceful on the top, but your feet are going like mad underneath. And he says that's the way you should feel when you're playing in the final.
And nobody put the pressure on us. Brian did the opposite. He took it off. He wanted to make sure that we felt that we'd done a great job getting there, and that just by getting there, we'd exceeded all expectations.
I don't remember being nervous. I just remember being excited and looking forward to the opportunity, but knew that we had a great challenge ahead of us because of Argyle sitting there waiting for us to play, and they had beaten us 3 times that year very handily. But I was excited to play the game.
Well, there's the playing of the national anthem, and we're getting ready to go in the BC High School Championship Final.
Dan Russell, a sellout crowd, capacity crowd here at the P&E Agrodome. And we're about to see what we hope will be 40 minutes of the province's best basketball to be offered. Of course, as we mentioned, the consolation final will take a lot to top, although we won't complain if they do it out here.
For those of you that were with us for our consolation final, Abbotsford defeated Kelowna 72-70 on the last buzzer second shot by Abbotsford's Sheldon McGee that won it. That got Abbotsford 3rd place. This game is the most important one of the tournament, though. This is for 1st place, the championship game.
The last time these two teams met, the Pipers defeated the West Van Highlanders 60-46. And it's the Pipers that get possession of the ball in the first series of play.
Tim Mills plays it to Jason Brown. Brown over here to right. Kenny Wright back to Mills. And Matt McLeod will control. McLeod playing it over to Kitchener. Paul Kitchener from outside. Switch!
The Highlanders have taken a 4-2 lead, and it's a nut house here. Excellent effort by the Highlanders. And we've got ourselves a basketball game here. 6-all, 6:50 to go in the first quarter. 4 seconds.
3, 2, there it is.
Oh, beautiful shot.
Steve Paulette, well, deep in the corner, sinks it. And there's the end of the first quarter. The Argyle Pipers are leading the West Vancouver Highlanders by a score of 12-10. We take you to Robin Arden right now at courtside.
Lead 16-14, and they're the underdogs in this. Chargers go ahead, 18-14 with 6:50 to go in the second quarter.
Out the Mills come into the tournament. And then they had to come up with a draw, and they did that quite a few times.
They went off Martyr's arm. However, that's not the case.
Argyle having a little bit of trouble in the second quarter. Not playing with the type of skill that brought them here as they are a little cold from the outside. A 7-point lead.
I've been impressed with Paul Kitchener's plays. Been holding his own since Locker went out. He's really looking at the statistics in the first half. The Argyle Pipers trail, as we mentioned, 25-16.
Have the Argyle Pipers shooting right to left on your screen now. Their home white uniforms, they're the home team tonight. So I guess technically speaking, they've been the home team in all 4 meetings, although this is the neutral court. Martyr has 3 fouls tonight.
And it's a 29-20 ball game, and the underdog Highlanders are right now into the position of favorites.
Leading by 9, they have the ball. And despite the fact that Argyle came out now, 127, it's a 4-point West Vancouver lead, 2:44 and counting. This is the 3rd quarter of the BC High School Championship Final. I hope you're enjoying it tonight. Here's the steal, Paulette. No, it's Mills. Scores!
game, and that 11-point lead by the Highlanders has evaporated, and the Pipers are doing what they've done best all season. That's score, score, and score. Serious talk in their huddle right now, so try to get a close in on them.
There is 7 seconds on the shot clock. It goes to Mills. Now just 3 seconds. Paulette, swish!
It's a tie ball game, 31 all.
A minute 40 to go.
Took a lot earlier than the Highlanders.
43-36 to score. 4:56 to go. Fourth quarter. Dan Russell and Gord Curnoff in the final game. It's come down to this. Can Marta put it in here? He falls. The ball goes in. The basket will count. Inside for Lockhart. Intercepted. Out of bounds. Argyle ball. This is the most exciting final in recent memory. At least in the past 5 years. It might go down as one of the most exciting finals of all time before it's all over. Paulette can't hit.
A 3-point ball game, and we come to the 2-minute warning.
They scored! It's now a 1-point ball game. It's pretty dull, isn't it? A 1-point ball game. It's come down to 45-44. Here it is. Steve Paulette at the free throw line. It's a tie ball game. A minute 34 to go in the basketball final. Paulette tries to put the Pipers ahead. He does!
We are down to 125, and we're not far away from deciding the champion in the BCAA Boys High School Basketball Finals.
13 seconds on the shot clock. Pipers trying to play tough defense. They're doing it right now. 7 seconds on the shot clock. 5 seconds. 4, 3. They get it up.
Wow, what a shot! Whoa! Desperation shot by Kitchener!
It's a tie ball game. Don't go away. 47 seconds remaining.
There's Ryan Walensky on the side. He's going to be at UBC next year. There's Brian Upson.
The big guy hits when it comes down to it.
Talk about a clutch basket. 40 seconds to go.
48-47. The score is for the Argyle Pipers. 30 seconds to go. They got to get a shot away within 16 seconds. Here is Louis. Louis trying to force it deep underneath the Lockhart. Can he get it up? No, it won't go. Rebound. Argyle gets the ball. They lead by 1 and they have the ball. They stole it. They stole it. Oh, Lockhart. No basket. No basket. The basket, I don't believe, will count. Timeout is the call.
The West Van Highlanders have a chance to tie the ball game. You go ahead and on the charity line, Dan Russell.
I'll tell you.
Oh boy, a consolation final, exciting, and a grand championship final. As far as I'm concerned, this has to be the most exciting BC final in history.
That's it. Here's the situation if you just joined us. 13 seconds remain in the ball game. The Argyle Pipers, favorite, leading 48-47.
5,000 people jam-packed into this facility, and I'm sure there's more. The parties are already ready to start.
They'll be going on the North Shore.
Where? We don't know. One's going to be a celebration. The other one, I'm sure, is going to be awake.
And both teams have reason to celebrate. There's no loser when it gets down to this. Okay, here's Paul Kitchener trying to tie it up here with 13 seconds to go. He does. Now he can put the Highlanders in a lead, which would force the Pipers to score.
He sunk the long shot from 30 feet out.
He does. Okay, 12 seconds. Here comes the Argyle Pipers. 7 seconds. 6, 5. Carter controlling, moving in, shoots. No! The West Vancouver Highlanders are the champs. They mob the field. Don't go away. Look at that. The West Vancouver Highlanders, champions.
It would be appropriate to say that all hell has broke loose here at the Agrodome in Vancouver. The West Vancouver Highlanders. There's a replay.
The last chance I got to see Brian was about a week after the championship game. My father and I went to go visit Brian at his house.
The whole team came over, and lots of friends came over, including Jim, and he actually had a really good day. The kids coming over, the team coming over, it was terrific.
Basketball was what gave him life, it gave him energy. So when he talked about basketball, he perked up. And so she encouraged us to come over and talk to him near the end of his life.
Sometimes I think, or Brian always felt, that it was harder for us than him having the cancer. So it was tough times, yeah.
2 weeks later, I was able to visit him again, here actually, and he was lying in bed, and it was a Friday night. I'd come over from Victoria, and we had a good chat, and he pointed to the small trophy that he had that represented the victory, and he pointed to, he said, "I finally did it." And then I'm not sure what the exact words were, but it was simply, "I'm ready." And so I left that day, and the next morning I got a call from Paula saying he passed that night.
It was the last time I got to see him, and I really wish I had more time with him, like everyone did, and I'm sure especially his family and his children.
Sometimes you don't understand, or you don't get it when you're 17 and 18. But when you reflect upon it, when you're older, yeah, you understand. You understand the effort. You understand the pain.
When my dad passed away, I was 17, so Gary would have been 15 and Brent would have been 13 at the time. I've got two boys, 17 and 15, and I just can't imagine what my mom went through, right? Trying to keep the family together, and she did an unbelievable job. My mom was incredibly strong through the whole thing.
It was a tough day when we heard that news, and you look back at the situation and you kind of see Brian's health deteriorate over the years and weeks and months that we were around him. It was a tough day when we heard about his passing, and then ultimately we went to his service and said our goodbyes to a man who's left a positive impression on me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, a complete warrior. Somebody that I admire, respect, love. I learned a lot from him. you know, to fight on, you know, to fight. When things are looking good, we're in a tough situation, just to fight, never give up, keep going, fight on. And
the lasting impression I was left with from Brian was not quitting, was never giving up, no matter how dire the situation. When you watch someone sadly dying like that, but still willing to give everything to a team of 16 through 18-year-old boys trying to win a basketball championship, that's courage. That's stuff you don't get to see every day. That's pieces of life that are really special, and you feel proud to be part of something like that.
I guess what he left us with was all the memories that we have, all the things we did with him, all the holidays we went, camping trips, fun things and things that don't work out you laugh about even more. But yeah, just all the memories we have of him and things.
Having the opportunity to have been coached by someone who was a true leader, someone who understood how to motivate people, those are lessons you never forget.
Well, it sets something in my mind. Something maybe magnificent can happen to somebody in the latter days of their life, and that we should always look to hopefully staying and doing something terrific at the end of our lives as opposed to giving up. And Brian has been in my mind ever since that period of time.
I mean, my dad showed me what it was like to be a great parent, a great father, a great husband. The response that I get from people, just how much as a teacher or as a basketball coach, the effect that he had on a lot of these people's lives is amazing, and that's something I hear a lot of.
Fate has the ball from the moment it leaves your hand. The hardwood congregation, breathless in the stands. It can raise you up, drag you down. You can blow through like a hurricane and leave without a sound. One more day, one more game in your mind. It's a long shot every time. Come on, stars align. It's gonna be a long shot every time. This old clock don't show no mercy. Feels like a long shot every time. When the stands have emptied and the one you missed is all you see. When the lights are faded, you got to choose just who you're gonna be. It can break your heart and leave you crying, or give you wings, lift you up, won't even feel like trying. One more day, one more game in your mind. It's a long shot every time. Come on, stars align. It's gonna be a long shot every time. This old clock don't show no mercy. Feels like a long shot every time. It can raise you up or drag you down. You can blow through like a hurricane or leave without a sound. One more day, one more game in your mind. It's a long shot every time. One more day, one more game, one more stage in your life. It's a long shot every